Hi everyone. Are you thinking about launching a startup? Do you have a lot of ideas but aren't sure which one has a real potential? Or maybe you're wondering how to test your idea before investing time and money? Today, we are talking about how to develop and validate startup ideas the right way. And for this topic, I have a special guest. Her name is Alyssa Kirst. She's a startup mentor and head of incubation at Silicon Allee at Fraunhofer HHI, and she helps early stage startup, especially in the deep tech, turn ideas and research into successful ventures. And for those who are new on my YouTube channel, my name is Hannah. I'm from Ukraine. I run digital marketing agency, and on my YouTube channel Berlin Biz, I explore business opportunities and startup scene in Germany, in Berlin. And today we are talking about how to develop and how to validate startup idea the right way. Let's get started. Today we are at the Deep Tech Night event where people, investors, startup founders and startup community come together. So I have a great opportunity to ask startup founder a simple question. How did you come up with the idea for your startup?
I'm Jake Gerhardt. The name of my startup is Sutra Teleport. So right now, our main project is working on a new type of rail system that involves small vehicles instead of like large trains, which is pretty much all of what you have. The only thing you have on rail tracks today, which is unfortunate because the tracks are the most efficient way to transport goods total, because you have the highest efficiency from the steel wheels on the steel rails. So it's kind of a way to reimagine the trains that are today that work in a lot of situations like in Berlin, but as soon as you go to the less densely populated regions, and even like in smaller cities in Germany, you have most people taking cars and less people taking trains because it's just not convenient unless there's a lot of people.
How did you come up with the idea for your startup?
I think I came up with it because I used to drive a lot. I'm from the US, and there most people drive a lot, and in Germany as well, in most places. And that's actually part of the problem. But that's also what inspired me to work on this, because I thought, every time I was driving, this is such a simple task. There must be a better way, and there must be a safer way as well, because, people that can, you basically, when you drive, you try to go in a straight line the entire time, and it's unnecessary. There should be a way that you can safely maintain a perfect course, and still be able to change. And so what I basically have developed over the past 3 or 4 years or so is a way that rail vehicles can switch themselves, and so they can act like cars, basically. So you have several tracks, and right now what you have is certain specific points where the trains have to communicate with the infrastructure. The infrastructure moves. It's called a switch track. And then the train can get a green light to take the correct route. And it's way too complicated, and it creates lots of delays, especially when the infrastructure breaks.
So it was idea based on your own pain point, right?
I would say so.
What's your name and what's the name of your startup?
Hello, my name is Niels Kahn, and the name of my startup is Mitigant, and I'm one of 4 founders.
Okay, and what does your startup do?
What we do is actually cloud security. Mainly, we secure Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Kubernetes, and soon Google. So we help our customers to make their infrastructure more resilient against cyber attacks.
How did you come up with the idea for your startup?
Well, actually, 3 of the founders met at the Hasso-Plattner Institute, and my CTO and my CPO, they did their PhDs in cloud security, and we elaborated that, let's say, experience and the knowledge we derived from that into a tool. So research, and then, let's say, it took us a few years to make something tangible and workable out of it.
So your startup idea is based on your professional experience, we could say.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. We have a very interesting conversation how to develop and validate startup idea. And Berlin has such a vibrant startup ecosystem, and almost everyone is trying to build a company, to build a startup, even if someone never thought about it before. It's really interesting to know about your background, about your journey. Tell, please, how did you first become interested in a startup and innovation? What led you into this world?
Yeah, that's I would say a long question. As sort of the journeys I think of most entrepreneurs. I would say classical business background, and I actually started out in entrepreneurship research, so in academia, and then through that really got interested in startups and especially deep tech startups. So I worked in different roles in business development, product, for different startups, then ended up building an incubator program and later on joining an AI software as a service company and building sort of the product unit. So there we developed new AI software ideas and validated them and brought them to market. And that's essentially what brought me here. So I'm really passionate about that early stage process, especially of working with technical founders and doing that translation of the technology to the business idea.
Can you tell us a bit more about your work with the Fraunhofer HHI and Silicon Allee? What kind of support do you provide for early stage startup founders?
Silicon Allee is, or started out as pretty much a founder to founder peer community here in Berlin in 2011. So it has a long legacy, but over time it's really evolved into sort of an ecosystem with events, mentorship. Here now, the startup space where we've teamed up with Fraunhofer HHI, which is one of Germany's most renowned research centers, to incubate and accelerate early stage deep tech ideas. That is also where my role comes in. So as the head of startup incubation here, I really get to work very closely with the researchers at Fraunhofer HHI who are interested in founding a business, and there accompany them through the process of developing their technological capability into an idea and then into a successful venture.
From your perspective, what makes deep tech startup different or maybe more challenging than other kinds of startup? Could you tell about deep tech startups?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question and one that's really close to my heart. I mean, I mainly work together with deep tech founders. I think there are a couple of challenges. I think very often the startup technology is grounded in sort of core fundamental research. And that also means then that you very often start with technological capabilities and not necessarily with a problem statement. So often your first step is to identify like a real world problem, customer problem that you can leverage a technology on. I think on top of that, it's really also the complexity that comes in. So being able to translate sort of what are the capabilities that you can build on those technologies and how can you convey that to potential customers, which again are usually then B2B space customers, which also are very, very unique to build a product with. So you usually don't go into sort of one-on-one user interviews, but you really need to think about how do I conduct first proof of concepts and pilots with potential development partners, and that's really where we start very often in the deep tech space.
What is the most challenging for startup founders in Germany? What are the biggest challenge for them?
So I think startup founders have lots of challenges all across the world, right? And in Germany, I think there are sort of some particular aspects that come in culturally and societally also. So for one, Germany is very risk averse as a country, as a culture that reflects in the VC investment capabilities that we have nationally. It's changing now, which is great to see, but it also comes in, for instance, with sort of the stereotypes that are attached to failure, which is very, very different. For instance, if you look at the US, where it's quite common to, take a couple of years, try to build a startup out of university. And that also then reflects on sort of people's personal lives, and becoming a founder is in very many cases still very personal. That's also why we try to here at HHI sort of de-risk that decision. But I think on a very positive note, one thing that makes Germany quite unique, and I would say also Europe in general, is that we have a lot of incredible talent, good education system, and also a lot of very good tech talent.
Super, so is developing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
let's speak about our main topic about how to develop and validate startup idea. I take part there often at the events like Deep Tech Night, and I hear lots of ideas.
Mhm.
And some of them are based on the professional experience. Some of them came from when a person tried to solve own problem.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this approach? How do you think this approach, when people make startup idea based on own pain point, how do you think is a good approach, is a good idea foundation, or there are some risks?
I think it's a bit of both. So the advantage to solving your own problem is pretty much you're your customer and you really deeply already start out with understanding the customer pain point and the customer problem. But that's also sort of where the other side of the coin comes in, right? In that, to some context, if you're too focused on your niche problem and your specific needs, then you're solving a pain point just for you. And that's a big pitfall. So in that context, it's super important to really validate if there is an actual market, if the problem is bigger than you, and to understand also what are the perspective of other users. So we see that often with people sort of who've worked in a specific industry, maybe also with a number of different companies, and then try to solve an industry problem that they themselves have experienced in multiple roles. That's a great ground because you're usually connected with lots of people that you can validate your problem understanding with. But that's really also the thing that you then need to do. So look past the scope of just your problem and try to understand what the holistic sort of problem is and if the market is there for you to build a startup on it.
Once you have a rough idea, what are the very first steps you recommend to assess if it's worth pursuing?
First of all, if you have an idea, congratulations. That's already a good start. I think there really the most important thing is that when you have an idea is to first try to break it down to what is the problem that you're solving. And for who are you solving it? Sometimes you start with a solution in mind, but really to understand what is sort of the underlying need, who are the stakeholders that have that problem, and really dive deep into that. And in that context, the first thing you should do is start talking to people about not necessarily your idea, but people that you believe to have the problem that you want to solve with your idea. Try to talk to them and understand what is it that they encounter in their day-to-day lives that is challenging them, and thereby validate if you're working on correct assumptions.
Maybe are there some methods or frameworks?
Yeah, definitely. So generally, what we follow here, and is also very established sort of best practice, is the idea of design thinking and lean startup. So really trying to, early on in the process, empathize with the customer, talk to them, and get a core understanding of the problem that you're solving for. Then later on, sort of go into prototyping, lean prototyping especially, and trying to validate your assumptions.
Okay, so I have the next questions, but maybe you already somehow answered, but maybe you will find something new. How do you validate the demand side that there are real need and people are willing to pay for a solution? And how can founders avoid building something nobody really wants?
That is a great question, and I think it's a pitfall that many people fall into. So, as I mentioned before I came here, I actually also was part of building a number of startups, and it's easy to sort of gloss over the evidence or play into your own biases sometimes. So to make sure that your idea is really viable, generally you need to look at three aspects. So you need to look at the desirability. So do people actually want it? the feasibility, can I build it, and the aspect of viability I missed. Is there sort of an underlying business model? And within those categories, there are core assumptions that you need to make and that you need to validate and understand. And especially in that sort of area of desirability, so do people really want it? There, it's super important to look at people's behaviors and not opinions or what they say, because people inherently have sort of a bias to please. They want to see you succeed. There's a really great book I recommend to any founder. It's called The Mom Test, and it pretty much works on the premise of we all have biases, and sometimes your customers that you interview lie to you, but unintentionally. And they're really going into looking at what do customers do, where do the numbers reflect their behavior, are they willing to pay? So what we always try to do is really get people to pay for proofs of concept, pay for early prototypes, because only when there's a willingness to pay, there's a real pain point. And if they're not, then that's really a red flag where you should be very, very wary.
Yeah, I'm totally agree. Because sometimes when we ask people, oh, do you like my product? What do you think about this product? And people tell, oh, it is so wonderful, it's great.
Absolutely.
But when you suggest to pay,
Yeah.
people are not ready to pay. It's a great method, I think. So maybe you can tell more specific about some practical low-cost ways to test an idea, especially for solo founders or small teams with no product yet.
Mhm.
What are maybe other tools
Yeah.
how to test your idea?
Yeah.
What people can use practically?
That's also a really, really, I think, good thing to consider. I think sort of as a pre-note, I would say usually you start testing your assumptions too late in any case. So the sooner you can start, the better. And we always try to have our founders, or I try to have my founders that I work with, start doing those tests before they write a single line of code. And that's something that you absolutely can do through customer interviews, through landing pages, through sort of early pitches that you do. And those are easy ways that require no coding to really, really see, is there traction, is there need? And now with AI, honestly, you can create such simple mock-ups of your solution. So there are no-code AI tools that you can very easily create to make a simple version of your product. It doesn't need to work on the back end. Or sometimes there are also ways to do a manual prototype. So for instance, let's say you're trying to develop an AI solution. Very often things that can be done with AI can also be done by humans. So just get someone to manually do what the AI would do in the background, create a front-end interface, and have your target customer interact with that and see what their response to that is.
There are so many tools today you can use for free, just
Absolutely.
create a landing page and then just to see how people react on your product.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you work with the early stage teams, so maybe you can tell us what common mistakes founders make or you see when it comes to idea validation.
I think one we already talked about, starting too late. So I think this is actually really something that's quite common for researcher founders. They often start with the idea, coming from research, my solution needs to be perfect. I need to conduct thousands of clinical trials, and then 3 years go into the world and you have not shown your product to a customer. So start validating and asking core market questions very, very early to your customers. I would say that's the first and most important thing. And there are a couple of other things. So being aware of sort of biases that you have around framing of questions when you interview your customers. Look at behaviors, not what people believe or what people say, to really validate the demand. I would say those are sort of the easiest fallacies to fall into.
What can you advise startup founders how to pitch your idea to other people?
You really only have very, very short time to catch someone's attention, make the problem resonate, and sort of spark interest. And that really comes down to having, I would say, a perfect opening sentence or elevator pitch. And there are many different sort of approaches. Ask ChatGPT, because we talked about AI before, how to sort of create a great elevator pitch. But two techniques I really like is, for one, start with the problem. So go deep into that and explain, who are you solving what problem for and to what benefit. So how does the solution create value for? And the technical details, this conversation we have a lot here at Fraunhofer HHI with the technical founders, those are background noise for now. People are interested in solutions, not technical capabilities. So that's a great frame for sort of a elevator pitch style conversation. Target customer, problem, and how does it create value? The second aspect that I think you could also go around is really go into sort of starting with the pain point. So um, pretty much is actually just a reframing of this. So talking about, what is the pain point that you're solving? How do you solve it?
When it comes about startup and ideas, how to find the balance between intuition and data?
I think intuition is something that you learn with experience, right? Looking at founders that are serial founders that have founded successful companies, or also people who have a lot of experience in an industry. They maybe by default have the right inclination. Same goes for some, I don't know, random business geniuses, although I don't really believe in the fact that they're just born entrepreneurs in that context. But really, those people are also working on data, especially the ones that have years of experience, have built companies before, and they've learned through doing. And back in the day when we didn't have such a, I would say, quantifiable startup process, as for instance, the Lean Startup approach now teaches, and this aspect of RAG prototyping and really trying to measure and quantify things, you inherently sort of calculated that, or got like a gut feeling of, this worked, this didn't work, and you learn from that. So you also base your intuition on, I would say, data. So my understanding is really, if you have an experienced founder, then they can build on their intuition. With early sort of student founders, there's less experience and data that they can build on. So you really have to hope. And there I would say, go for the data. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to validate early, to test your assumptions, and to base your approach on the customer feedback and the real world insights you get.
What role do mentors or advisors play in idea development? What should founders look for when choosing someone to guide them?
Yeah, also a really good question, I think. My role as a mentor is to be a sparring partner to the founders and to help them question their own thinking, and make them also think about their blind spots. And I always think that sort of a red flag in mentors is people who go out with sort of their opinions very strongly and almost take on that counter role. So that's something I don't really try to do. I much rather take a back step, let them develop the strategy, because they also learn in the process, and then help them reflect and question. And I think that's a really great mentor. I think you can have advisors past that. Those are great people that your mentor should be able to connect you with. So people who've experience in sales, experience in the industry, and those are great to get you knowledge, get you insights. But as a mentor, I think really try to find someone, yes, who has experience, but who can spare with you and who can sort of point you in the right direction, and give you the capabilities to learn, not the answers, because you're still the founder. And in the end, you need to sort of go through that process of building the startup yourself.
Okay, so I think that this is a great time to tell about our giveaway. You suggested you have a chance to get a consultation from Alyssa, and I think it's a great opportunity. You just can put a comment to this video about what was the most valuable from our conversation and why, and Alyssa will choose the answer she really like, and you can get her advice, your mentoring, your consultation. I think it's a great chance for startup founders.
Happy to help, and looking forward to those comments. Maybe one last sort of add-on. So the space that we're in here is the Silicon Allee at Fraunhofer HHI accelerator space. We're currently working up to our next accelerator application deadline. So in case you are a startup in the deep tech space, then look at the Silicon Allee website and see if becoming part of our accelerator problem would be a great fit for you.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Hannah, for this.
So thank you so much for this valuable conversation, and you gave such a practical advices for people who want to start to launch their own startup. If you enjoyed our conversation, don't forget to like this video and put comments, and don't forget that we have a great present for you from Alyssa. You can get her consultation, her advice. So put the comments and say what was the most valuable in our conversation, and see you in the next video.